All please rise. The Honorable, the Chief Justice of the Republic of the Philippines, the Senior Associate Justice, and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of the Philippines. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons having business before the Honorable Supreme Court of the Philippines shall give their attention, for the court is now in session.
Please be seated.
So we'll proceed with the interpellation by the justices. First to interpellate is Senior Associate Justice Mario Victor F. Jonen.
Thank you, Chief. With leave of the court, may I ask the Solicitor General to take the podium? Thank you, Madam Solicitor General. I hope that you had a good lunch. I understand that the Solicitor General's office provided for their own packed lunch.
Yes.
Yes, but just to inform you that we provided food for everybody else, just for disclosure purposes. So the amicus and the petitioners' counsel. But we thank you for saving the court some expense.
We did not want to assume that we will be included.
Yes, and please don't assume next week, next time again.
That's fiscal prudence.
That is fiscal discipline. Now, just to start off, so there is what is called a the budget of expenditures and sources of funds. This is called the BESF, just so we are familiar with the terminology. And the BESF is a part of the NEP, the National Expenditure Program, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the National Expenditure Program contains the BESF, the Budget for Expenditures and Sources of Funds, and a more detailed listing of the expenditures divided by purpose and divided by classification, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, plus the automatic appropriation, but
Yes.
only for information.
Yes. Yes, and it seems that is one of the issues that we have also for this case, that from your perspective, there are three parts. There is the program, there is the unprogrammed, and there is the automatic appropriation. But on the other end, they are classifying it only as programmed and unprogrammed. But that nonetheless, just so we are familiar with the figures. And then there is what is called a total expenditures for the program, a TEP, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And this is the total amount for the NEP that is proposed by the budget of the President, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Just so we're clear, the NEP, the National Expenditure Program, is otherwise called the President's Budget, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. And after the President's budget goes through the House of Representatives, the House of Representatives produce a General Appropriations Bill, or what is often referred to as the GAB, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And after that, it is given to the Senate, and in the Senate, they just call it the bill on third reading, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And after that, if there are disagreeing provisions, they call a bicameral conference committee or a BCC, and this BCC therefore produces a proposed resolution where both houses will ratify, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And from there, they produce the General Appropriations Act for the signature of the President, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And after the GAA, the President exercises a different kind of veto. We will examine that later, which is called a line item veto, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the President signs the GAA within a set time. Otherwise, it will be reenacted. But along with his signature, the President formally communicates his vetoed items to the House and the Senate, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the House and the Senate may overturn the veto based on the Constitution by a 2/3 vote, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, do you recall the amount of unprogrammed funds proposed in the NEP, National Expenditure Program, of the President in 2024 for unprogrammed? You recall the amount?
Yes, Your Honor. I have it in my notes. The unprogrammed appropriation proposed by the President in the NEP for 2024 was 281
281
281
billion 908 million 056, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. How much was the approved on third reading in the GAB, the General Appropriations Bill of the House, in terms of unprogrammed appropriations?
Your Honor, I only have what's in the GAA.
It was 281 billion 908 million and 56, similar to the NEP.
Okay.
Would you know how much, in terms of unprogrammed appropriations, did the Senate approve before the BICAM? Again, it was 281 billion 908 056. So as far as we are concerned, in 2024, which is the subject of the petition of Lagman et al. And Pimentel et al., the NEP was 281 billion, the GAB was 281 billion, the Senate was 281 billion, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And how much was the proposal of the BICAM when it met to conciliate disagreeing provisions? How much in unprogrammed appropriations?
Your Honor, it is 731 billion 448.
So it was 731 billion. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
And just so we are clear, let's show the slide so everybody knows what we are talking about. So up there, you will see now NEP 281, GAB 281, Senate 281, BICAM 731. Correct,
Correct,
Madam
Your Honor.
Solgen? And per your argument, this is something that we should respect because it is an act of wisdom on the part of both houses to increase what was not debated upon from 281 to 731, meaning that there was a difference of 449.5 billion added into unprogrammed appropriations, correct?
May I qualify my answer?
Yes,
Your
yes,
Honor?
please, go ahead.
It is a question of wisdom because when we say an act of wisdom, it might be ambiguous as to there's already a judgment if it was wise
Yes.
or not.
Yes.
And the hope of our hope is for the court to rule on a narrow question as to checking whether the power that was exercised by the Congress is within the constitutionally required constitutional requirements or if it was within the limitations that are provided by the Constitution, Your Honor.
Okay, I will take that for now. In terms of total expenditures under the NEP, the National Expenditure Program of the President in 2024, would you recall how much it was? It was 4,301,676 million and some thousands of pesos, correct?
In my notes, Your Honor, it is the total expenditure program is 5.7
For the NEP,
billion.
under the
For
NEP,
the
2024.
for the NEP,
It was 4.3, correct? At any point, Solgen, if the DBM representative is here, the chief has reminded me that you may consult with the Department of Budget and Management if they are here.
There are representatives of the DBM
Here. That's good to know because we might ask for an increase in the budget of the judiciary also. But that nonetheless, so it was 4.3, and in 2024, the total GAA expenditure was 4.7. Again, I put up the slides. Correct me if I am wrong. In 2024, the NEP was 4.3, the GAA was 4.7. So in terms of the total, it was increased. And the NEP, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Solgen, the NEP contained both program and unprogram, correct? The National Expenditure Program or the President's budget already contained a proposal for unprogram, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So the NEP is both program, automatic, and unprogrammed, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
But in 2026, which is also a budget in issue today, this is the petition of Congressman Erice, who was here, and Congressman De Lima. The NEP was 4.6 billion, correct?
For 2026,
Six. I put it up there. But what was actually approved by the houses, by both houses, and the President was lower. It was 4.646, with a corresponding decrease also in the unprogrammed appropriation, correct?
yes, Your Honor.
Yes, okay. So that we know what we're talking about, in 2024, we will start to put up now the additions in the unprogrammed fund that was included after not the third readings of the houses, both the House and the Senate, but after the BICAM. So the first slide will show you, let's put up the slide, Panay Guimaras Island Bridges Project, 3 billion. Universal access to quality tertiary education, 7 billion. This was from the program transferred into the unprogrammed, correct, Solgen?
Yes, Your Honor.
And universal access to quality tertiary education, would you know if there is a law that actually requires funding for this? Universal access to quality tertiary education.
May I confer, Your Honor, with my team?
Yes, you may defer your answer until, unless you have it now, yes? Is this the Bamakino law? Yes, and this is the law that actually provides free tertiary education, which was first under the President's budget program. But in 2024, it was moved to unprogrammed. And later on, of course, we will ask questions about whether this is in fact not only constitutional, but whether it was legal that it is moved from one program item to unprogrammed. Then there is number 11, a quite interesting nomenclature, priority social programs for health, social welfare and development. It says priority, but this also came from program and it was transferred to unprogrammed, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. The AFP has been wanting modernization for a long time, but the revised AFP modernization program of 10 billion, is this billion? Yes, was transferred to unprogrammed funds, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Then also, payment of right-of-way was transferred from program to unprogrammed, amount of 3 billion, correct? Yes.
Correct, Your Honor.
And then pre-feasibility studies, preliminary and detailed engineering, 3 billion. Later on, we will encounter this again. And then next, public-private partnership, strategic support fund, maintenance, repair, rehabilitation of infrastructure. Number 17 is interesting. government counterpart of foreign assisted project in the amount of 51 billion. This is different from the item on foreign assisted projects that I will show you later. This came from program. This was a definite expenditure for government counterpart for foreign assisted projects. It was moved from the program funds to the unprogrammed. Then next, for the repair, rehabilitation, and expansion of Dalawag International Airport, I can only guess who transferred this. Payment of personnel benefits in number 19. Madam Soljen, you agree that 59 billion for payment of personal benefits was considered as unprogrammed from program, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Then, pension and gratuity fund. This means that the retirement fund of a lot of our government employees, and I can only guess perhaps a portion of this, some of our judiciary personnel not covered by our existing law, 40 billion, 250 also to the unprogrammed, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Then you have the libreng sakay became unprogrammed, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Also the screening of anti-terrorist equipment, etc., unprogrammed. National Data Privacy Program, 620 million, became unprogrammed. Preparation for national election in 2025, since there was no election, perhaps they moved it to unprogrammed. Construction and repair of NFA warehouse facilities, also unprogrammed. Development and modernization plan for the Iwahig. Then the next slide, you will see there, interestingly, acquisition of fire trucks became unprogrammed, not programmed. Then digital agriculture project also became unprogrammed. Then the next slide, aquaculture, fisheries, Marawi siege victims compensation program. This is the long-awaited compensation to the victims of Marawi. From program, it was transferred to unprogrammed. Supplementary feeding program, I think this was for younger kids that were indigents. Then, next slide, the creation of lawyer positions in the PAO became unprogrammed. Perhaps lawyers are not that important anyway. And then we have, finally, the last one, number 50, OWA Welfare Services. This is the office that produces support for OFWs, was also moved to the unprogrammed funds. This was in 2024. Oh, and total, at the end, there is local government support fund in the amount of 5 billion was moved from program to unprogrammed. We will ask you later what this is, what this item is all about, or perhaps some of my colleagues will be able to ask you if I cannot. And the total in terms of additions to unprogrammed was 303 billion, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
But this was not all. There was an increase in the already set items for unprogrammed. And the first one was mentioned by one of our amici as, and she called it a new pork barrel. I will not go to that extent because that may be a legal terminology, but it is definitely perhaps a lump sum item, which was covered also in the case of Arroyo, Belgica, especially the Belgica of 2013, penned by Justice Ben. So the NEP proposed that the SAGIP program was only 50 billion, but in 2024, this lump sum was increased to 225 billion pesos, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And for support to foreign assisted projects, maybe they were, as one of our amici was saying, they were predicting that some of the foreign assisted projects in the pipeline might be approved. It was increased from 117 to 178, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So this is the situation that I think all of us are agreed upon, which is now at issue, because 2024, as shown by our various amici, was the year where there was an extraordinary increase in the amount of unappropriated, unprogrammed funds, not unappropriated, but unprogrammed funds. Okay, now let us proceed. The concept, let's talk about the architecture in our Constitution, because we need to talk about the various provisions in context so everybody understands it. So the Constitution does not give one branch of government what is usually referred to as the power of the purse, because the power of the purse is big and consistent with the architecture of the Constitution. The contents of that power are distributed among constitutional departments and organs. Do you agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
And the basic idea behind separation of powers is to prevent tyranny and ultimately to increase accountability, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
The separation of powers doctrine assumes that unchecked power tend towards tyranny. So liberty requires institutional restraints within government, assigning functions to distinct organs. The structure expresses a rule of law ideal, which is that governments must proceed in temporarily ordered phases: legislation, administration, adjudication, and accountability, rather than through undifferentiated sovereign will. You agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
And appropriation and spending funds are critical for governance. You agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
Appropriation and spending funds is not only because of whim, but it is part of an overall plan of the executive and hopefully with the participation of the legislative. And in our case, as presented by one of the amici, there is actually a Philippine development plan, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And it is from 2023 to 2028, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Just to take note, the court has an SPJI, strategic plan also, and we are implementing it with budgeting also here. So, but in a political economy where there is a deficit of equality, where there is poverty, and when therefore there is a lot of disempowerment, with most of our people being only able to govern through voting and dissent and criticism, the extent of prerogative of those in departments or constitutional organs must be clearly and adequately defined. Do you agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
And in interpreting the Constitution, though, apart from this purpose, we must be mindful as the court that the judiciary, unlike the executive and the legislative, is not possessed with complete, current, and contingent information. You agree?
Agree, Your Honor.
And that the executive must also be given some appropriate leeway by both this court and Congress to address the current situation. You agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
And that laws, including the General Appropriations Act, are frameworks and limits plans of action, but they do not and should not unduly shackle the executive to address what has not been fully foreseen despite reasonable and diligent efforts, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Like the situation we have today, that when the budget was passed, no one could have imagined what will happen in the Middle East, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
But I am sure, and we are witness to the fact that both the House and the Senate are currently investigating, holding hearings in aid of legislation to see what they can do to supplement whatever powers are needed by the President to address the current situation. In fact, they passed a law allowing the President to suspend excise taxes, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. In other words, we should be mindful that we should not straitjacket the reading of the text of the Constitution, even with precedents, and make sure that the Constitution should be a living but empowering document, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Empowering, but also a document with accountability, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Because as Richard Posner said, the Constitution is a living document, but it is not a suicide pact, correct? In other words, the Constitution is a living document. However, it's not a suicide pact. In other words, all the departments must be rational in terms of arriving at their own conclusions with respect to their own power canalized, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. And for a purpose of exercising the power of the purse, just so that we are all clear, this is divided as follows. The executive, the president, and there's only one executive in the Constitution, it's the president, and everybody is the alter ego, prepares the budget, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
The legislature, and that is Congress, with the House acting first, authorizes or appropriates, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Then the president, and the president only, spends or executes with clarification, again, by our case in 2013, that the legislature has no participation in the post-enactment or execution stage. You agree?
Agree, Your Honor.
And the Commission on Audit, as a constitutional organ, checks on the expenditures, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
The Ombudsman can prosecute, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And the judiciary, of course, is tasked with interpreting the boundaries of these powers as contained in the text of the Constitution and in statutes, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Now, during your presentation, in your opening statement, you mentioned the case of KMU versus Aquino. Do you recall in what context? That KMU versus Aquino is the ponensya that actually said that the court respects that all the organs of government can have first crack at the interpretation of the text of the Constitution, and it respects that, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
But then there is also some wording in that case that says that in the final analysis, it is the duty of this court to give a final reading, correct or wrong, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Would you know how I know?
You were the ponente.
Yes, I was the ponente, and the case was unanimous in terms of this court. Okay. Now, let's look at the actual provisions in the budgetary process so that we are also clear. To look at the architecture of the Constitution, we start with the basic provision in Article 6, Section 29. So it's up there. No money shall be paid out of the Treasury except in pursuance of an appropriation made by law. You agree with me that this single provision shows the relationship between the executive and the legislature, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Is there any other money that can be spent by government that is not in the Treasury mentioned in the Constitution?
No, none, Your Honor.
All collections are submitted to the Treasury except for fiscally autonomous institutions like the judiciary, because there is a separate provision in the Constitution for that, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. So the whole cycle includes preparation of the budget, appropriation, budget execution, and budget audit. Agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
The issues we now face are generally about that stage of authorization or appropriation, correct?
Correct.
With its impact on preparation and execution, but principally about authorization. You agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
So, in terms of preparation, the provision, the basic provision on the part of the executive is Article 7, Section 22, which states that the President shall submit to the Congress within 30 days as basis for the General Appropriations Bill a budget of expenditures and sources of financing, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. And the budget of expenditures and sources of financing in the current interpretation, in practice, contemporary executive interpretation, and in the law as contained in the administrative code, the BESF is actually the budget of expenditures and sources of financing, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And it says, including receipts from existing and proposed revenue measures, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
At some point, we will see that the word including is contested by the respondents and one of the petitioners. But it's very clear here that the President only submits one budget, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Because it says a budget of expenditures and sources of financing. We will relate this later to Section 25, subparagraph 1, in relation to the increases in the budget of the President, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. And the budget contains, you agree with me, sources of financing, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, parenthetically, here. does this provision allow deficits? In other words, is there anything in our Constitution that says that our budget must always be a balanced budget?
None, Your Honor.
Madam Soljan, just to be clear, what is a balanced budget?
A balanced budget, Your Honor, is you have expenditures, and the expenditures will have to be supported by the sources of financing.
Yes. So, would you say, so this allows for, this statement and the Constitution allows that the President actually tells Congress, we are going to have a deficit, correct? Based on the projected revenues as well as the expenditures, that we will have deficits, correct?
Can you repeat your question?
In other words, that the Constitution allows the President to communicate to Congress through the NEP and through the budget of expenditures and sources of finance that we are expecting to have a budgetary deficit, which means that our current income revenues coming from tax and non-tax measures will not be sufficient to cover the proposed authorization of expenses, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Sa madalit salita, pwedeng sabihin ng Pangulo sa ating Kongreso na ang kanyang budget ay kulang sa revenue pero mas marami ang expenditures. Tama?
Tama, Your Honor.
Yes.
May I clarify
Yes.
also? In our briefings by the DBM, what we understand is that even the deficit spending is being planned and part of,
Yes.
there is a deficit framework.
Yes.
Globally, there could be a target level which is accepted as an acceptable level, and it will depend on our executive branch
Yes.
as to what that level is.
Actually, later, we will go into a bit of the economics just to make sure that people know that this is legitimate to have a deficit financing. I will not go into it with you. I will go into it with some of my former professors. And I do so with a lot of trepidation because I did get a high grade in basic economics from Professor Monsod and also a higher grade in public finance from Professor Dr. Jokno. And I don't know if they can recall those grades now. But in any case, subject to contempt of court, of course. So deficits are there. Mainly, they can be filled in by income. Let us say they did not predict that there was high dividends from one of our government-owned and controlled corporation, non-tax revenue, correct?
Correct.
Or perhaps a new tax that would be passed by government, correct?
Correct.
Or a good performance of our economy, therefore increasing the amount that we collect in, let us say, value-added tax because there is more transactions, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So also, it can be filled in by borrowings.
Correct.
Such as, for instance, when the Monetary Board issues a treasury bill of different maturities depending on their monetary policy. And these are actually borrowings that we have, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And technically speaking, all our currency is in a debt, except that we will not get into that, correct?
Thank you, Your Honor.
And that it is also possible that we borrow from foreign sources, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And with respect to foreign sources, that is also regulated by the Constitution, more specifically Section 20, which actually says that the only, that we can contract, the President may contract foreign loans only with the prior concurrence of the Monetary Board, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And that the Constitution also says the discretion of the Monetary Board and the President to contract foreign loans can be regulated also by Congress because it says as may be provided by law, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And that at the end of each calendar year, there is a submission to the Congress so that they can monitor our foreign loans and what we have guaranteed. There is a report, correct?
Correct.
And that the manner of this report can be governed also by law, correct?
Correct. Your
So there is a check and balance with respect to foreign borrowings, and this was wisely included in our 87 Constitution. It was not in our 35 Constitution by the constitutional commissioners. One of them is actually present in the session hall right now in the person of Commissioner Christian Monsod, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and I had the privilege of being a research assistant of a constitutional commissioner. I carried the briefcase of one of them at that time, so I know how they thought in a while. Okay, and domestic borrowings. Who authorizes domestic borrowings? If you know,
May I confer? Your
the Monetary Board for Treasury bills, etc., and others. Okay, now. All these proposed borrowings, should they be indicated in the budget of expenditures and sources of financing?
It should be included. Your
So it is there. It is part of the premise of the budget that is given there. They are going to say, the President is going to say in the BESF that there are going to be loans. So in other words, the NEP already contains all the premises for all types of budget, program, unprogram, etc. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. And now let's look at authorization, just so we're on the same page. One of the main bases and the point of contention is Section 29, well, not really contention, but 29, subparagraph 1 and 3 of Article 6. So we already mentioned subparagraph 1, and then there is the concept of a special fund, and this was interrogated by the court in the latest case of involving PhilHealth with Justice Ami as the ponencia, for which our amici Professor Monsod said we did something good, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. So there is a special fund to be differentiated from a special appropriations law. There are laws that create special funds, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Very briefly, are these special funds the SAGF, special allotments in the general fund? Is this the same?
The special fund, if the law that provides for the special fund says that it is automatically appropriated every year, then it goes to a SAGF, it goes to an account.
So all special funds are or should be in SAGFs, correct? And not all SAGFs are special funds.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Incidentally, the legislature is also involved in terms of taxation as a revenue source, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So therefore, when the President says that in the BESF that it will request for new revenue sources, it will in fact be signaling to Congress that they will be proposing new taxes, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes, and this is covered in Section 28. I will just flash it briefly just so we know. Now, there are limits to what Congress can do with respect to the President's budget, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And let's read and parse the provisions very carefully before we go into further interpellation. So let us look at Section 25, subparagraph 1. There are two sentences there. The first one is, Congress may not increase the appropriations recommended by the President for the operation of the government as specified in the budget. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Very clear. And it says, the appropriations recommended by the President for the operation of government as specified in the budget, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Now, Madam Solgen, there is another word, the same word budget, that appears in Article 7, the President, correct? That was Section 22, where it said the President shall propose a budget of expenditures and sources of financing, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
As part of the NEP, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So therefore, here it is clear that whatever is in the NEP should not be increased by Congress.
Your Honor, may I...
You will qualify.
Yes.
Because for you, the unprogrammed funds, no, first, the automatic appropriations are not part of the budget of the President, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And the unprogrammed funds are also not part of the budget, correct?
They are not part of the budget that is... we believe that that is not the part of the budget where the prohibition on increasing the ceiling is applicable.
Okay, I'll take that for now, under advisement. But the point is that, so if you say automatic appropriations is not part of the budget of the President, then I will ask you later to locate it in the Constitution where it is. And the other point is it possible that the unprogrammed funds is not in Section 1, subsection 1, but in subsection 4? A special appropriations bill shall specify the purpose for which it is intended and shall be supported by funds actually available as certified by the National Treasurer or to be raised by a corresponding revenue proposed therein, as suggested by one of our amici, a justice of this court in one recent case, and some of the petitioners, that unprogrammed can be disciplined using subparagraph 4. What is the position of government?
It is the position of government that the Special Appropriations Bill is a separate provision in the Constitution. The Congress has the option. It can be invoked, it can be passed, and historically has been passed. In our study and survey of the different special appropriations bill, the length of time could be as, I think I saw...
We can go to the difficulty of passing a special appropriations bill at some point, and it can be part of the query, I think, of some of the justices. But as far as I'm concerned, I just want to locate where you see automatic appropriation. You say that it is not in subsection 1, and you're asking the court to actually make a ruling for the first time that automatic appropriation is not part of the GAA.
Okay. The automatic appropriations, we say that it is not part of the President's budget because the NEP, which is the President's budget, is presented to the Congress for their approval. However, the automatic appropriations, our premise is that it already has an approval. So we were actually asking the DBM, then why are you including it in the budget, which could be a source of confusion? Because people will just look at the totals, but and their explanation is that for fiscal programming and for transparency, so that it is informing Congress of the total allocation, including the allocations for the automatic appropriation. So in that sense,
it is only for disclosure, in your words,
yes.
in your comment, in your omnibus comment. It is for disclosure, not for purpose of appropriation, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, but there is a purpose for subparagraph 1, and we can go to that later. And whether that squares with your characterization of automatic appropriations is there. And indeed, this court has just ruled in the case of GAA versus PAGCOR, where it actually said that there is an automatic release of PAGCOR funds to, it's GAA versus Philippine Sports Commission from PAGCOR et al. But we will get to that later. In any case, just to flag the different points of view of the parties in relation to unprogrammed appropriations. Now, at issue also is, to a certain extent, presidential certification. I think this was raised by, if I'm not mistaken, the pleading of Pimentel et al., former Senator Pimentel. And what is at issue is the concept of when the president can certify, and flashing to you on the screen, except when the president certifies the necessity of its immediate enactment to meet a public calamity or emergency. So later on, I will ask you, because of the certification, was it possible to ratify the BCC, the Bicameral Committee Conference report, in just the same day that it was distributed? Okay. Just for our information, how thick is the General Appropriations Act? It is a few feet, no, inches.
3 to 4.
Thousands
3
of
to 4
pages.
volumes.
Yes, and thousands of pages, correct?
Correct.
So they will have the NEP with them, and they will also have the GAA with them, and in between, they have the GAB, they have the Senate version, and they have the Bicameral Conference Committee report, the big one, and the small committee report for 2024 and 25, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So you admit that there was a small committee conference report? Not yet.
I have.
Just so I am very clear that it is in fact there, that there was a bicameral conference committee report and preceded by a small committee report.
I have not seen a small committee report,
Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes, because I asked you and I wanted you to be more deliberate and conscious, just so the transcript will not show that the government has admitted. Okay, now, appropriations is a special kind of law. It is not an ordinary law. This applies to general laws and perhaps also special kinds of law. Appropriations is a special kind of law because first, it originates from the House, Article 6, Section 24. Second, the President has line item veto on this particular law and no other. Third is, by the end of the fiscal year, it immediately lapses, unlike any ordinary general law. It does not immediately lapse, it is reenacted, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and there is, in fact, a position from one of the petitioners, because of the automatic reenactment, what is always the national emergency involved in passing a law? Just so we're clear that we acknowledge that there is that issue and you had your own response, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. May I now ask, I will call on you later, may I now ask on our amici, Professor Solita Collas Monsod, and may I ask her to take the podium this time? Because she has called me out that during her presentation, she lost her opportunity to actually face the court and bank because she was sitting down.
Your Honor, may I sit or?
Yeah, please sit down.
Thank
Please
you.
sit down, yes. Thank you, Professor. May I just ask a few basic questions, and I hope my questions are correct. The budget for 2024, 2025, and 2026 is based on deficit spending. And our research shows these figures in terms of the deficits in the program. So for the 2024 program, it was 5.6% of the total budget, total expenditures. In 2025, it was 5.5%, and in 2026, it is 5.3%. Would I be accurate to say that this is the rounded off figures?
I have in my figures 5.7 in 2024, 5.6 in 2025.
Okay, so
Sorry.
I stand corrected.
No,
Yes.
you may be right.
Yes. Professor, my question is, why is there a deficit budget? Why is it economically sensible to have a budgetary deficit, because the understanding of the ordinary person is you do not spend what you do not have. And therefore, why is it that government produces a deficit?
Well, the government budget is a little different from the household budget. The household budget, the family has to stay within its limits. But in the government budget, considering certain plans, the need for government to stabilize the economy or to do whatever, it needs certain funds and can be allowed to have a deficit as long as over time that deficit is removed and it becomes surplus. In other words, the budget balance is not only for 1 year. It can be, the budget can be balanced over a longer period of time.
And may I ask, that deficit is not something that is arbitrary,
No,
but it is something that is studied by our economic managers.
absolutely, sir.
And the reason for this is it doesn't want to be irresponsible for the next administrations, and it wants to leave our economic fundamentals intact before it passes to a next generation.
That's right, sir.
Okay. Now, to cover the budget, just so we are clear, there are non-tax revenues and there are taxes as revenues. And if I may just show very briefly and very quickly, non-tax includes fees and charges, not taxes, income from treasury operations. These are interest incomes on our government deposits, like from our land bank. We have advances to GOCCs that are returned, income from our investments, including Maharlika Fund, etc., guarantee fees that are paid to government, foreign exchange risk cover fee, government service income. Am I correct here that these are the income from treasury operations?
Your Honor, you're right.
Yes. And then for national government income, collected by the Bureau of Treasury, shares in dividends, airport terminals, etc. Then we have royalties for our natural resources like Malampaya, and we have foreign grants. Am I correct, Professor, that foreign grants are not treated the same as foreign loans?
They are different. Foreign grants don't have any interest component.
And foreign
Loans, you
grants,
have to pay interest.
yes, and because foreign grants are almost free,
Gifts. almost.
gifts, so we receive them, subject only to the political conditionalities or other conditionalities that a donor may give. But does this need to go through the monetary board or our economic managers?
I'm not sure that it has to go. But if it's a grant, it will be
Yes.
definitely accepted.
Yes. Professor, is it correct to say that the more we keep a deficit, the more dangerous it is in terms of our indebtedness?
Oh, it is correct, sir.
And
Your Honor.
therefore, even the deficit that is proposed by our economic managers, and you were one of those key economic managers many times in our government, and you teach this also to our up-and-coming economists, that it is very important that we keep it also to a certain ratio or percentage.
Yes, Your Honor. That's why it's one of the highlight indicators in the Philippine Development Plan.
Yes.
The deficit.
Yes, and would you kindly enlighten us what are the important ratios that we should take into consideration?
Well, the eventual target is to get that deficit down to zero. As I said, the government has is allowed certain leeway, but it must eventually get down to zero. That's why the deficit target of the 2028 budget of the 2023-2028 development plan was to get that deficit down originally it was to get the deficit down to 3% of GDP, but in the interim that the plan has been in operation, they have retargeted. Now they want to retarget down to 4.3% of GDP. In other words, they realized that their deficit targeting was way below standard, and they had to change the deficit targets, mainly because of this stuff that's going on now.
And in your presentation, you showed us that we missed on several targets, which included the deficit and which included the national debt stock.
Yes,
And would you say that we are at very dangerous times?
Not quite. It's not quite dangerous times. There are certain rules of thumb, and but we're close because, for example, the rule of thumb with respect to debt stock to GDP is that it should not exceed 60%, and we are now at
63,
We are now at 61.
61.
Sus ko, hindi ko mabasa eh. Excuse me. Debt stock. 63. 60.7% in 2024. We're just over that rule of thumb. Rule of thumb that we should keep the debt stock to less than 60% of GDP.
And would you say, Professor, that the interpretation of the court with respect to the words that we find in the Constitution is also as critical for fiscal discipline? In other words, that we should interpret the provisions in the Constitution not only from the original intent of our forefathers, but also from the point of view of what is practical, what the words can bear given the current circumstances and given the creativities of many of the agencies.
I absolutely agree, Your Honor. You yourself said that the Constitution is a living thing.
Yes, and
So
that,
it must change and adapt.
and that our legal interpretation also is should be also a sort of an economic interpretation in the sense that we should be fully aware of the opportunity lost and etc.
I fully agree, Your Honor.
Thank you, Professor. Now I am confident that I learned my economics 11 and 101. May I call on former Secretary Butchabad to the stand, please. Secretary, you once were quoted as having called the alarm regarding our debt stock. That 48% of our debt was supposed to be now, 48% of our revenue is now being paid off for our debt, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And since you were DBM Secretary, may I ask, where in the NEP or the BESF do we find the commitments to pay for interest rate on our debt, both domestic and foreign?
It's, well, in the GAA, you can find the allocation for servicing interest. But the amortization of principal, you do not find in the GAA because it's not an interest, it's not an expense. But in the other parts of the GAA.
So
Your Honor.
that is what I want to clarify, that the payment of the principal cannot be found in the Government Appropriations Act, even if it is something that we use our resources for, but it is not subject to the authorization of the Congress, nor is it made public as to how much our principal costs us for every year.
Yes, because the payment of principal is like a financial transaction. You are just repaying what you borrow. And like for 2026, as you correctly pointed out, our deficit is 1.5 trillion, but we have to pay principal amortization to the tune of 1.1 trillion. So we have to borrow this year 2.6 trillion to cover the deficit as well as the payment of principal, which, as I said, is a financial transaction not to be found in the GAA.
Okay. Would it be found in the BESF?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of that, but it's in some parts of the GAA, but not in the expenditures part of the GAAs.
So with respect to the payment of our interest, may I just show you a slide? And this we got from the program amounts of payment in the GAA and BESF, and we contrasted it with the BTR cash operations report, the actuals that were made. And in our study, 2023 and 2024, the actual payment for interest was higher than the program interest. Now, would you know where we get payment for the additional interest because it was higher? Is this in unprogrammed?
No, I think there is a presidential decree, 1177, that obligates us to pay above all else our interest obligations as well as our principal amortizations, Your Honor.
So the amount that is put in the GAA can be actually overturned or changed in terms of the actual payment because there is that presidential decree.
Yes, if it comes to that, ahead of any national priorities, those come first. And there are deleterious consequences if we don't do that.
Okay.
Like, for example, the immediate, there's a word for it, that we have to pay all our debts.
Yes.
Once that happens. So we have to make sure that that obligation is settled first. And to make sure that happens automatically, our
Yes.
creditors, in the early days of martial law, insisted with President Marcos
Yes.
that presidential decree should be issued.
Thank you. I go into this just to clarify the effect of whatever decision we make in terms of the planned deficits and its impact on something which I think many of us are concerned about. It is our debt stock and our interest payments. So just bear with me a little bit more, just so we get the actual context. So in terms of principal amortization, we had no other source except the BTR cash operations report. And from our, we did a table, and the table said that in 2023, and I can be corrected here, I'm just looking at the ballpark figures, the principal payment in 2023 was 943.6 billion. In 2024, it was 1.1,257 billion. And in 2025, it was 2025, the preliminary figures is 1.157 trillion in terms of our principal amortization payments. Would you say that these figures are more or less in that ballpark?
Well, the average proportion of debt owed domestically and debt owed abroad is about 80 to 20%.
Yes.
Your Honor.
Yes, but in terms of principal payment, in 2024, we paid 1 trillion in debt payment, correct? And that would have meant for a budget of, let us say, 4 or 5 billion, that was quite a lot.
It is.
Yes.
In fact, that's really, the concern is not so much debt sustainability, Your Honor, but it's really what debt servicing is impacting on fiscal space or the ability to have available funds. Like say, for example, in this instance, we are facing a crisis in the Middle East. We need a lot of funds to be able to support our efforts there, which were not originally planned for. So that if you have a increasing narrowing of your fiscal space, then your ability to respond to contingencies is very much limited, Your Honor.
And going to slide number 33 in my presentation, there is if we look at the debt service ratios from 2023 to 2025, and just following what was said a while ago, the debt service ratio, total debt service to revenues in 2023, 41.1%, meaning to say 40% of all our revenues were used to pay for debt service.
That's correct.
2024, it was 45%, and in 2025, it was 45%. That is because we were constantly missing our targets, and therefore our debt service ratio was increasing. And would this mean that 45% of all revenues in 2025 was spent to pay our debt before a single classroom is built?
Yeah, that's not correct, Your Honor. Our inability to use our debts to increase our productive capacity and our very limited revenue generation programs results in much of the revenues we generate are eaten up by the payment of interest and ahead of even the most important priorities that we have to attend to, like public health and basic education, Your Honor.
So this is what you mean, or what the Amici mean, as fiscal discipline, that we need to be able to control the spending vis-a-vis our revenue and vis-a-vis our future because of this particular effect, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And fiscal discipline, therefore, though not yet a part of a constitutional value, what we value now is accountability, transparency, etc. Would you say that it should be one of the targets in terms of a constitutional value to be proclaimed by this court because it has such an important bearing to the interpretation of some of the provisions that will have economic consequences?
That's correct, especially in the ongoing discussion about unprogrammed appropriations. For example, Your Honor, if we take a huge part of the appropriation cover of foreign assisted projects and put them somewhere else, while you can pay for those use of the appropriation cover for some other projects, while you can pay for them by cash management, eventually you still have to pay borrowings and the increase in deficit that will happen. But these are things that are not known publicly, and in fact, it's good that we're talking about unprogrammed appropriations, especially for the past 3 years when a good part of the program appropriations were diverted for other projects other than what the President put in the national expenditures program, Your Honor.
Thank you, Secretary. The other point that I'd like to make is the debt service ratios, the targets for 2026 was premised on a growth rate, correct?
That's
That
correct.
growth rate being 6.6%, if I'm not mistaken, correct? But actually now, it might be different given the current circumstances. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And therefore,
Radically.
actually it was 6.5%, and showing to you slide number 35, Okay, we did very basic, and this might be wrong, but a recalculation. So if the BESF of 2026 was 6.5%, if our growth rate becomes 5% or 4%, we saw the figures, the debt to GDP ratio would increase from 62.3, which is the target this year, to something like, if it's a 4% growth rate, it might become 65.1%. Of course, our calculation can always be wrong, but given the lowering of just to show that the lowering of the growth rate will also have an impact on our debt to revenue and debt to GDP ratio, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Then, of course, we have taken into consideration that what we are facing now and the context where we are making a decision right now is a crisis, a fuel crisis. And if we had 3 scenarios, an optimistic scenario where in 2 weeks' time there will be ceasefire, or in 6 months' time, a medium scenario, there will be a ceasefire, or the extreme scenario that the entire year there will be war in the Middle East, and continuing with whatever threats were given by the male leaders of the 3 countries that are involved. So showing to you 36, slide 36. It is possible that the cost for every barrel of oil will increase. And then slide 37, macroeconomic impact on the Philippines. And slide 38, it will have indeed a very strong impact on our projections, or the projections right now under the GAA. Would this be a right approach if we wanted to analyze where we are headed?
Well, it's better to see a worst-case scenario and prepare for it, and then if a lesser degree of crisis happens, then you're more or less covered. But our difficulty as a nation, Your Honor, is that this crisis that came upon us as a result of the Middle East war is really more an aggravation over a crisis that has been simmering. In fact, if you recall the statement of the central bank governor, he said, "I've done everything that monetary policy can do to grow our economy, and it's time for reforms in governance and it's time for fiscal reforms and governance to do their share."
So this is an aggravation of an already existing structural crisis, and that the governor of the central bank said that they've done everything that they could with respect to monetary policy. I am tempted to ask Dr. Jokno, except that I cannot, because it will have an impact on our markets if I ask him something about that. But thank you for that. And again, when we did this, just to see our context, we were so thankful that we are only reading the law and the Constitution and not managing our economy. But that we know that whatever we do in interpretation will have an impact on what we need as a country.
I agree, Your Honor.
Thank you, Secretary. May I now... So there is this magnitude of our debt servicing. There is our deficit. Okay. So the question that we want to ask you is, when there is an excess revenue, where should it go first? Legally and constitutionally, or is there no standard? When there is excess revenue, should it go to program, unprogrammed, and because you created a new one, automatic appropriation?
Your Honor, the sources of funds for the program are different from the sources of funds of the unprogrammed appropriations.
But the triggers in the unprogrammed section includes any excess in non-tax revenues for 2025 and 2026. And in 2024, it was both tax and non-tax revenues. Any excess, it did not qualify.
Yes, yes, Your Honor. For the first trigger, on excess revenue collections in any one of identified non-tax revenue from its corresponding original targets as reflected in the BESF. So meaning, for this first trigger, Your Honor, then the priority will be once it only exceeds the source of financing for the program, then it will trigger for the unprogrammed appropriation.
Sa madalit salita, sinabi natin kanina na may deficit. Ibig sabihin, yung planadong expenditures, pasensya na Ilocano ako pero nagtatagalog ako. So yung gastusin natin ay mas malaki kaysa sa kikitahin natin. Yun yung nakalagay na sa program. Na kahit sa programmed expenses, mas malaki na yung gagastusin natin kaysa yung kikitahin natin. At nakalagay doon sa ating BESF na kapag merong additional na income, hindi maliwanag, sa pakiwari ko, hindi maliwanag kung gagastusin yan muna doon sa program or pwede nang gastusin palagi doon sa, or pwede nang gastusin doon sa unprogram. Hindi naman palagi, pero pwede nang gastusin sa program. In other words, my question is there anything in statute or in the Constitution which compels in the budget execution that whenever there is excess income, and I will now go to excess income in non-tax revenues because that is the trigger in 25 and 26, that it should first be spent for program before unprogram.
It is only in the GAA, Your Honor.
So, in other words, there is no constitutional frame where it says, finish the unprogram first before you can go to the unprogram, except the case of Araulio, but it in a general sense, and I would even submit a bit of obiter, correct?
Correct, Your Honor. But the Araulio, based on our position, is premised on a different GAA, and the articulation of the triggers in the Araulio case are different from the articulation of the triggers in the 2024, 2025 to 2026 GAAs. And also in the Araulio case, there was a subsequent motion for reconsideration that was filed, and it actually clarified that you don't have to wait for the whole year to ascertain whether there was excess, because otherwise then there will never be funding for the unprogrammed appropriation. So in the motion for reconsideration, the court clarified that based on a quarterly report by the DBM, there can be a determination of whether the target has been met.
Okay, just to be clear, I will flash now the triggers in the unprogrammed funds. Okay, 2024 was quite unique. There was a subparagraph D. And subparagraph D is now non-existent. It is null and void. It was stricken down in the PhilHealth case. Okay, so we are left with the first trigger. And the first trigger, if you notice, it says coming from the excess revenue. I have to look at my copy because I cannot also see. Okay, so the first trigger is excess revenue collection or any one of the identified non-tax revenue sources from the corresponding revenue. If you compare it with letter A of 2025, same. Compare with letter with 2026. Identified non-tax revenue sources from its corresponding revenue collection targets as reflected in the BESF. Then in the letter B, new revenue collections or those arising from new taxes or non-tax sources. Also letter B, also letter B of 2026. Approved loans, the difference is letter D. It does not exist, correct?
Correct.
Do you notice any other differences? In 2025 and 2026, excess revenue collections in total revenues was removed. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
As well as fund balance of GOCC.
Correct,
Yes.
Your Honor.
This is the only provision in the GAA which controls where excess revenues, new tax sources are to be spent. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So there is nothing in the GAA which allows the DBM and the President to allow a SARO to be used immediately to pay for unprogrammed appropriations. Correct? In other words, when there is excess revenue, nakalagay dito excess revenue. So pwedeng gamitin na kaagad sa unprogrammed appropriations. Tama?
Correct, Your Honor.
So, ibig sabihin, the category of programmed and unprogrammed is really, does not really have a material difference. Because in the interpretation of government, pwede kapag merong excess na pera, excess na revenue, na hindi naka-earmark, na pwedeng gamitin na ito kaagad sa unprogrammed funds. Tama?
Tama po, Your Honor.
And that was why Senator Drilon was actually proposing that we have to be clearer. And actually also Secretary Butch was also saying that, and of course Secretary Jokno was also saying, you have to discipline all of this so that it's very clear that it should be in program funds, correct? And constitutionally, it matters because once you transfer a PAP, a program and project and program, coming from program funds, okay, and you transfer it to unprogrammed funds, and you want to fund it immediately, you can increase the amount of unprogrammed funds, like in 2024, you can transfer funds there so that it continuously increase, and the fiscal space created in the program funds, you can reallocate. And then you can have the chance of still having it funded. And in the interpretation of government, you do not violate 25(1) because to you, the limit is the program. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor, because again, in the analogy that we attempted to include, that we attempted to make in regard to programmed and unprogrammed, is in number one, the prioritization of the programs. So if you put a PAP, a project,
Madam Solgen, how do you say that it's a priority? So we have deficit. Ibig sabihin, mas malaki yung gagastusin natin kaysa yung nakukuha na kinikita natin. Pero kapag lumaki yung kita natin, what you're saying is, there is nothing in the GAA, and I do not see anything in the GAA, which says you have to fund the program first before you go to unprogram. Is there?
okay. Yung pong, kaya ko po sinasabi na priority, sapagkat yung sa NEP pa lang, ikinocommit na po ng executive na kung ako ay magtatrabaho at ganito ang mga economic factors, kinocommit ko na meron akong kikitain ng, let's say, 1 billion pesos. Priority po yun sapagkat kinomit na ni executive. Kaya yung mga nakalista doon, pagka na-meet na po yung targets, then they will finance the program. So, the fact that it is put in the unprogrammed
To be clearer,
appropriations-
Madam Solgen, the program funds has expenditures, correct?
Correct po.
The revenue to cover these expenditures are lower than the program funds, correct?
Correct po.
So in other words, there is a deficit, may kulang. Tama?
Tama po.
And sinasabi ng pamahalaan natin, kikitahin namin to. Sana lumaki yung income namin. Sana, magkaroon ng dividendo sa PhilHealth or whatever, or some GOCC na umakyat to. Okay. But here in the provision in unprogrammed fund, it says, excess revenue of non-tax sources can be used for unprogrammed funds immediately. There is no control. There is nothing here that says you have to spend first in program. There is no footnote, and we searched the GAA as best as we could, and perhaps you can ask your own staff to take a look at it. There seems to be nothing which says there is an excess. You have to spend it first for the program. That's why I'm saying, even if in terms of symbolism, program seems to be the priority of the president, when Congress puts it in unprogrammed, there is a possibility that there can be a SARO to be issued in order to release funds for the unprogrammed funds, correct?
Your Honor, our interpretation of the total revenues here are the total revenues that have been set as the target.
Yes, ganun pa rin. Ibig sabihin, yung tinarget na income and targeted expenditures, may deficit pa rin. May pagkukulang yung kikitahin batay sa BESF mismo. And I asked two of the experts already, and in fact the presentations, there is a program deficit. And the program deficit will be funded by non-tax sources and debts. Pero ang sinasabi ko ngayon, nasaan dito sa GAA natin yung provision na nagsasabi, pag meron kang bagong kita, gamitin mo muna sa program. Is there in the law, in the GAA law? And my next question is, should it be in the reading of our Constitution that that cannot be done? That when the government commits program funds, that it cannot use whatever it earns immediately for unprogrammed, because your concept of unprogrammed is standby. Ano hong ibig sabihin ng standby? May mauuna sa kanya. Ibig sabihin, halimbawa sa isang pamilya, sasabihin na mauunang kakain yung mga maliliit na bata kung kulang yung pagkain natin. Therefore, yung mga matatanda naka-standby. Hindi sila yung mauuna. So, my next question is, was there any expenditure in 2024, 2025, where the unprogrammed came before the program funds?
May I confer with my team,
Yes.
Your Honor?
Meron, di ba?
Yes, Your Honor. My team confirms that.
I am confident about that because that was presented to us during the PhilHealth oral arguments. That there were expenditures that came first from the unprogrammed rather than the program. Okay, now, before you spend for unprogrammed, there has to be excess, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And therefore, by the way, what is a SARO? What does SARO mean? Just so we are clear about the abbreviations that we are using.
Special
Special allotment,
allotment po.
release order, correct?
Special allotment release order.
So it is an order coming from DBM to the Treasury to release money, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, for every SARO coming for an unprogrammed item, must there be a certification of excess income?
Yes, there must be a certification of the presence of A, B, or C.
Okay. Because, can you assure this court that every expenditure in 24 and 25, because that is at issue now, has come from a certification accompanying a SARO?
That's theoretically the case,
Okay.
Your Honor.
So, can I ask the government to submit to the court copies, a listing of all the SAROs from the authorizing release from the unprogrammed, as detailed as possible, meaning to say not the cumulative, but all the SAROs, you can list it down and give us digital copies. And for each of the SAROs, please match it or correspond it to a certificate of income or whatever the treasury issues, certification of excess income or 1, 2, or 3.
We
And,
will comply, Your Honor.
Can you comply by next week so that the justices who will interpolate can have that as a resource also? Correct?
We will comply, Your
But as
Honor.
far as we are concerned right now, you admit that there is nothing in the law or in the Constitution that says that whenever there is excess income, the budget execution is compelled to first do program.
Okay. May I clarify, Your Honor? So again, because in my understanding of the supporting financial sources, because they are defined and they are not commingled. So meaning if the sources of funds for the program are A, B, C, D, the sources of funds for the unprogrammed are E, F, G, or maybe A plus 1 in terms of the first. And so that's why, to me, there should be no other requirement to be found in a law or in any provision in the GAA because the sources are different.
Okay. You say that it's specific. But if you look at 2024 trigger, it actually says excess revenue collections in the total revenues. Meaning to say, basta't excess dun sa total. Okay? Or in any one of the identified non-tax revenue sources from its corresponding revenue collection as reflected in 2024. Noong 2025 and 2026, they removed the total and they just put there excess revenue in any one of the identified non-tax revenue sources. Meaning to say, for the identified non-tax revenue sources, it was almost earmarked. Kapag may increase, any increases there was already earmarked for unprogrammed.
Correct, Your Honor.
So you are earmarking funds that are excess, meaning to say good collections of government, good performance of a GOCC, you have earmarked that for unprogrammed, not for the program.
Correct, Your Honor.
And yet
Which
you
is-
say, the position of government is that Congress cannot exceed the ceiling of the President's budget, but it can exceed the unprogrammed, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's why it was 303 billion pesos, correct? Exceeding.
Correct, Your Honor.
So if I were a member of the House, and I will not certainly become a member because I cannot win any election, but if I were a member of the House, bakit ko ilalagay sa program? Ilalagay ko na lang sa program. Sigurado pa yan, kapag may excess revenue, mauuna ako, hindi yung program. And I can put anything in program so long as the leadership or the BICAM will accept. That's why it was a jump of about 400 billion from the agreements of the House and the Senate, and then bicameral increase it by 400. I would rather go there because I can add everything that I want in the unprogram. So goodbye fiscal discipline.
Your Honor.
Yes. Where did I make a mistake?
Okay. In assuming that the executive or the Congress, actually, it's like everyone has is gaming the mechanism. It's as if we are thinking that why would the Congress not put the priority programs in the unprogrammed appropriations because that will for sure be funded, which is incorrect. Because if the government...
You have asked a question that I will ask from someone coming from Congress. Why would they choose unprogrammed from program? Or why is it that they would rather move some of the program to the unprogrammed? So it creates fiscal space in the program because there is a limit, correct? And
Correct.
therefore, they can make inclusions. I'm trying to avoid the word. Inclusions, insertions, etc. into the program. That's a theoretical possibility. I'm not saying that that happened. But what I'm saying is you create the fiscal space and then you move it to, by moving it to unprogrammed, and then you can put whatever you want in the program. Okay, that's one possibility. Okay, now, of course, we do not assume the worst. But then it is our role to actually put the guardrails so that this will not happen. And therefore, to prove that I am wrong, therefore, that is why I'm requiring, were there expenditures from the unprogrammed that came before expenditures from the program? Second, were there expenditures from the unprogrammed that did not have the, the certificate of excess coming from the, no less than the treasury, because it is the only one that can determine whether there is excess income, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, so we will require that of you. By the way, how do you get a SARO? A special allotment release order. There is the regular releases. And the chief, for myself under the SET, si Chief Ben under the HRET, we have that authority. Once in a while when I am acting chief, I issue a release order for benefits of the staff, always. But in any case, that's the point. There's a regular release order, correct? Special allotment release orders are special, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Who releases that?
The note here says, please ask DBM. Well, DBM is the...
DBM, okay. And before the DBM releases, this is the President's budget, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Must the DBM always clear with the Office of the President that it will release a special allotment release order? You see, the DBM is part of an economic management team, correct?
Correct.
And therefore, they have to make sure, as you said in your opening statement, they have to make sure
ask DBM.
that the funding is within their entire plan. They have a Philippine development plan, correct?
Correct, Your
So
Honor.
is it the practice that the DBM issues it, this SARO, because it wants to?
Okay, I've gotten information. Some secretaries said that they need the president, and some say that it's within the power of the Secretary of DBM.
Okay, for this administration. Just so we know, because we are about to come to a ruling with respect to how it is. And if it is only an alter ego lang pala nagre-release ng SARO, then that will weigh heavily on us. Because at least if it's the president, we will know that we are dealing with a co-equal entity. And the president, of course, comes with a lot of respect in this courtroom.
For the current secretary, in our briefing, he said that he confers with the president.
Okay, for every SARO, therefore, that is also with the consent of the president.
It should be.
Okay.
Your-
And of course, you're going to give us the SARO. Are SAROs only for unprogrammed funds?
I don't think so, Your Honor.
Yes. Anyway, please cover the process of the SARO also in your memoranda, because that is very important for us to be able to identify. Okay, thank you, Madam Soljan. May I ask Dr. Jokno?
Thank you, Your Honor, for now.
Okay. Madam Soljan, just to be clear, for every SARO, there needs to be consent by the President.
Based on what Secretary Rolly told us, that for the release in the unprogrammed appropriations, he has to get the alignment of the President.
And for the budget secretary before the current budget secretary?
I do not have that information now, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Please be ready because I am sure the next interpellator after me will ask you again.
Yes, we will prepare, Your Honor.
Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Jokno.
Good afternoon.
During your time as DBM Secretary, did you need the permission of the President to release any SARO?
Yes, because SARO, it does not apply only to ADAN program allocations. It applies also to some special funds like calamity fund, contingent fund, and miscellaneous personal benefits fund. That you need the approval of the President. But may I answer the previous question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I researched and I found out that there usually Congress would increase the appropriation of certain departments like Public Works, and they will reduce the allocation for DOTR, right? So he cannot veto that increase. Otherwise, the whole budget will be
Affected.
right?
Yes, because
So, but he has a general instruction that he will say, I have found, it is interesting that the Congress has increased the allocations for certain departments. Now, my instruction is this, okay? I'm just paraphrasing the veto message, that they should submit a special budget to DBM, coming up with a revised performance targets, and it has to be consistent with our CAS programming and other rules and procedures, and approval of the President. There's always approval of the President, except in 2024, that I noticed. Okay.
thank you for that very
But
enlightening.
I will put that as part of my brief,
Thank-
Your Honor.
Thank you. Can I just ask some contextual questions? So this concept of unprogrammed funds, in your experience and your research, when did it actually start?
Well, I have not looked at us way back in 2019. As I said, I prepared the 20, when was EDSA one? 1986, right?
1986.
I prepared the 1987 budget. That's the first and only budget under the Freedom Constitution. And I already used the unprogrammed appropriations at that time. And it has been used ever since.
And back then, did you have triggers for unprogrammed?
Yeah, it was primarily meant for foreign assisted projects.
Only foreign assisted
That
projects?
was the main reason for the unprogrammed appropriation. There's also an entry, if I remember right, called General Fund Adjustment. So for example, there's a pending case that is finally decided by the Supreme Court after 20 years, and there's an instruction from the Supreme Court to that agency to pay this guy or this contractor. We get the money from that General Fund Adjustment,
Yes,
unprogrammed.
yes. But nowadays, Dr. Jokno, the Supreme Court does not need 20 years to decide. It is now
So,
much less.
But it's
it-
not your turn.
Yeah, yes, just, no, not 10 even. But the point is that it was there as a standby fund for things like foreign assisted projects. So in your opinion, today, it is still important to have unprogrammed funds.
Definitely, Your Honor, because as I said, any project delays is costly. For example, they remove funding for the subway system that's supposed to be finished by 2029, right-of-way appropriation for the subway, and also the north-south rail system they remove, and they put it under unprogrammed. That will cause a delay of at least 5 years in the implementation of that project. At the same time, because it's delayed, then we have to pay what is called commitment fee to the lending agency, and that's usually around quarter of 1%.
Just to be clear, so you are saying that the funding for the subway was moved from the program to the unprogram?
Well, I have some numbers there. I will put that in my brief.
Yes. So in other words, in 2024, 2025,
Several years.
for several years, the funding that was supposed to be for the payment of the subway was moved from the program to the unprogram.
Or it's deleted from the program.
Deleted from the
I don't
program,
know whether that was put under the program.
and then in the unprogram, it was subsumed under, or the understanding was, it was subsumed under foreign assisted projects?
Correct.
Yes. And you are saying that that meant that instead of the unprogram being assisting us in the sense that you have a standby allocation so that when it is already ready, that we can make the initial payments already. What happened with the subway was we had to spend more because there was no allocation to pay the
Correct.
counterpart.
It cannot move forward because there's no funding for right-of-way acquisition.
Okay. And you mentioned another project. What
The
was it?
North-South rail system.
These are the big ticket
The one,
items.
the railway system that will go all the way to Clark and go all the way to Laguna.
So these are big ticket items that was
Yes.
supposed to be already funded, were these major projects of the current president?
Yes.
Yes, these were,
This was done to create what you say fiscal space,
Okay.
so that the congressmen and the senators will have their own projects
Okay.
funded under program appropriation.
so just to repeat what you said, and this is not my words, so this was deleted, these two projects, big ticket items,
The budget for the right-of-way was
budget for
deleted.
the right-of-way, for the purpose of creating fiscal space.
I have the numbers.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, these are general adjustments. The budget of the Department of Transportation for year 2022 was reduced by 49.9%, from 151 billion to 75 billion. For 2023, it was reduced by 36.6%, from 167 billion to 105 billion. In 2024, it was reduced by 65.5%, from 214 billion to 73 billion. And in 2025, it was reduced by 51.4%, from 180.9 billion to 88 billion. This is for the Department of Transportation and Communication, which is responsible for the big ticket items, the big projects. At the same time, the budget of the Department of Public Works was adjusted from 38.6 billion to 786 billion in 2022, then, or by 14.6%. Public Works, okay. And then in 2023, it was adjusted from 718 billion to 894 billion, or by 24.5%. And then in 2024, from 822 billion to 997 billion, or by 21.4%. And in 2025, from 900 billion to 1.1 trillion pesos, or by 21%. Okay.
Thank you for the data, Dr. Jokno. My next question is, unprogrammed, why would anyone choose to put an existing PAP, project or program, already in the regular budget, in the regular program budget, why would they want to transfer it to the unprogram?
Let me, that's the same question you asked the previous.
Yes.
The procedure is like this. Sometime under President Ramos, I was sitting as a representative of Senator Angara in the LEDAC, and it occurred to me that the budget system is so cumbersome. For example, you prepare the budget first half of the year, give it to Congress, and then after it's passed by Congress, nobody can spend the money because they need a SARO or a GARO, okay? They still need that. And I said, what the hell? But why not use the General Appropriations Act as the release document, which we adopted, okay? So now, we're now only talking of the SARO, no longer the GARO, meaning that the budget is, as approved by Congress, can be implemented from day one because you don't need a GARO anymore, okay? Now, it's only with respect to the SARO. So it's not going to happen that the unprogrammed, the items in the unprogrammed appropriations will get first priority before those in the regular budget. Because, as I said, from day one, you can already spend your budget on the basis of that reform which I did during the Estrada administration.
So even if there are excess funds, it is a matter of who uses it first.
Correct. So you have a long list. I noticed the long list, around 300 billion worth of projects. Now it depends on the Secretary of Budget. But if with respect to the foreign assisted projects, that their priority is to fund the implementation of the foreign assisted projects. That's their priority. Once the loan agreement is completed and the funds released, then it goes through. And then in answer to the previous question about grants, all money, even with grants, they have to pass through the Treasury first. And the Treasury has to acknowledge that they received something. And then the agency who is the beneficiary of the grant will submit a special budget to DBM, and then they can use the money. That's, in that sense, the grant is what is called automatically appropriated.
Okay. Thank you. The other point that you made during your opening statement was the increase in the allotment of the road users fund. Okay. Can you enlighten the court why there is a push usually to increase the road users fund apart from what is provided in the NEP?
As I said, that road users fund has been a major source of corruption during somebody else's term, right? But the point is that allocation is submitted by the Secretary of Public Works to the President and the budget. And it is based on a formula, like, for example, the linear, the length of the roads, the quality of the roads, how often should it be maintained, etc., and the capacity of the agency. So to me, that is a very solid estimate of the Secretary of Public Works. It used to be prepared by the Road Users Board, which has been abolished as a result of the recent law. So the Secretary of Public Works will submit that to the President, and then DBM will then take into account what was submitted. So what you saw there is what they submitted to the President. And so I don't see any reason why Congress will insist on increasing the allocation.
And in fact, in the 2025 budget, the veto message of the President was they understood that the road users tax, without vetoing, I think, they said they understood that the amounts that they presented will only be what is expended.
Correct.
Although not clearly vetoing the increase in the road users tax. In any case, thank you, Dr. Jokno, for very enlightening points. Sige, para makapahinga tayo.
Sa next session,
Yes. Before the chief is intending to adjourn, but may I just ask the Solicitor General? So kindly also prepare information about the usage of the road users tax in 24 as well as in 25.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, for submission to the court, all of the requests during this interpellation, kindly submit before noontime of Wednesday next week. Before noontime of Wednesday, so that you have Tuesday next week para 1 week na total. Would that be okay, Chief? Yes.
We will comply, Your Honor.
Solgen, for the next oral argument, can you bring with you the DBM representative to the DBCC, as well as the DepDev representative sa ICC? Can you bring them with you as resource persons? Because
Yes,
my
Your
line of questioning has questions for them.
Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Your Honor. We will
Thank you.
comply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Investment Coordination Committee.
Before the court is a motion for leave to nominate amicus curiae filed by the Council for Respondents, the Solicitor General, requesting that former Representative Jose Maria Clemente Joey S. Salceda to be included as an amicus of the court.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, the same is hereby granted. Former Representative Jose Maria Clemente Joey S. Salceda is invited as an amicus for these proceedings. Please request him to coordinate with the Office of Senior Associate Justice Marvic Leonen for his presentation in the next session.
Thank you,
Thank
Your
you.
Honor. Thank you.
Lala. Madam Clerk of Court, are there any other matters?
There are no other matters, Your Honor.
There being no other matters, this session is suspended to resume on April 21 at 9:30 in the morning also. Thank you very much.